Hello and welcome to Marginal Support, where support is anything but marginal. I am your host, Andre Lindeen. I have, I think, a bit of a celebrity with me today, or at least I consider him a celebrity in the support world. Matt, it's great to have you on. I don't think you need to introduce yourself, but go ahead anyways.
Well, the Oscars are on right now, so obviously I could have been there, but I've chosen to do this instead. So thanks for having me. Uh, um, my name is Matt Patterson. I am at Help Scout, which is a support platform to delight and retain your customers. I think that's what they tell me. Um, and I'm here in Australia, just south of Sydney, and I've been doing support and support related content, I would guess, for pretty close to 20 years right now.
Quite a while. I told you this offline, and I just want to say here, but when you did a call out for people who had experienced support, and you had everyone send you in clips, I sent you in a clip, and you graciously included my clip in one of your shows, and that was the seedling that got me thinking, oh, maybe I should do something myself. So, thank you very much for doing that and allowing me to do what I'm doing now.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, I think more support people should have an outlet for their voices. It's not a voice that gets heard a lot in the business world. So, everybody listening, go start your own podcast. I'll come on there.
Yeah, it was for me. It was surprisingly easy. I reached out to you and I said, "Hey, Matt, do you want to be on my show?" And you're like, "Yes." And I was like, "Wow, this is amazing. Thank you." So,
That's great. I think more, yeah, we just all need to talk about it more. I think it's something that doesn't get enough attention. And I think there's a lot of people in support who maybe have something interesting to say, but just don't have an outlet for it. It's not a yeah, you're not getting up in front of the whole company much in a support role most of the time. But we all can help each other, especially now when the conferences and things. I mean, for me in Australia, it's so far to go. So a podcast is a good way to at least get to talk to some other people doing what I do.
well, that's excellent. Yeah, support driven and all Elevate
Elevate.
CX. Those are all very far even.
Yeah.
So, but anyways, what was it? I when we were talking, you said one of the things you're writing about right now, one of your passions, I guess you could say, is support channels and the different way that people we in the world offer support. Could you kind of dive into that a little for me, please?
Yes. Well, let me tell you what I was doing this morning. Well, I was writing the newsletter, so the Supportive Weekly newsletter, which you should all subscribe to. But I was writing that this morning for it'll go out on Thursday. And I was writing about channels because Help Scout is just releasing a WhatsApp channel, which should be live by the time anyone sees this. And I was thinking about channels and all sorts of things. But as I was doing that, I got a message on my phone from my dentist. And it said, like, you're overdue for your appointment. So click on this thing to book online. And I did click on the thing. And it said, you can't book online. It was very annoying. I would do personally just about anything to avoid having to call somebody. It's not my favorite channel. Um, so when I saw that, I was like, oh, sweet, I could just do that online and I can look at the calendar. I don't have to go through that tedious conversation of what about Thursday the 23rd? Now I'm like, oh, when is that? And I got to find my calendar. I didn't want to do that. I was happy to book online, but then it made me create an account and then it said, we don't need anything from you at the moment, Matthew. That's literally what it said. I'm like, well, good. I don't really want anything from you either, but I do have a bit of information. Anyway, so I've been thinking about channels. That's what's going on. Uh, do you have a favorite channel?
You know that I did back when I was in the actual support world, and I actually really liked chat just because I thought that it was an instant interaction with people. It was a lot more personal than I think Facebook and or these other channels where it feels like there's a step removed. But times are definitely changing, and I think people are liking that you can get support on the apps they already know. WhatsApp for being one of them. What has been your experience with people actually wanting to have support on these non-traditional channels?
It feels maybe a generational change is happening with people who came up using social media. In Australia, we've just had a new law about banning kids on social media until age 16, maybe. But I think a lot of people have come up and that's just how they talk to all of their friends all of the time. And so it makes a lot of sense They don't really know what email is. My children, certainly, who are two of them are teenagers, they've never really had to use email other than because an account is created and you have to log in once and get the code and then you never go back there. So I think we are seeing that kind of shift happen. And you know what they say, try and be where your customers are. So I think we're seeing that to a degree.
Makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think, for people maybe my age, Gen X, what, millennial, born in 80, I think what we knew originally was the phone. And most people dreaded going on the phone because you had to go through that phone tree. Then you had to wait and you had to be saying, someone will be with you currently. And so I think, at least for the younger generations who I've heard hate being on the phone support is probably the last thing they want to do. So going to where they are, I think makes sense. What channel besides phone have you seen be the least effective though?
Well, this is a question. I don't think there is an answer to that, right? Or at least there's not one answer. What's the least effective channel? It's just the one that doesn't work for that customer at that time with that question. Because I think you'll find any given person, even the same person, even though I hate phones, sometimes a phone call is going to be the best thing for this particular conversation. Like I need to talk to someone on the phone. It's going to be much faster. And so I will suck that up and do it because that's better than going back and forth forever on email when they're not really grasping what I'm trying to say. So I think the question for any support team is going to be, what's the set of channels that is going to cover the most range of the customers that we have and what they like to do in terms of support, and also is going to be suitable to the types of questions that they have with us. So if you're getting like super technical, trying to do that on a phone call is so hard because, like I need you to be looking at the screen. I need to be seeing your screen maybe, or I need you to follow a set of instructions that are written down. And maybe I need you to type something. That's so hard to do on the phone. And I mean, I have personal experience. My first job was doing tech support for a sort of software company, quotation marks, software. It was very terrible. But trying to help accountants over the phone troubleshoot software was almost impossible, I would say. And so I think that the type of support you need to do really should shape which channels you offer, even if that's not necessarily what the customers would prefer. I know accountants love using the phone, but they were not good at getting support over the phone.
I can wholeheartedly empathize with that. I think my real first support job was doing support for a fintech company, and I was talking to portfolio managers and traders and stuff like that. So it was the same thing. I'm like, click the start button. Where's that? It's in the lower left-hand corner. I don't see it. Oh, okay, move you. Yeah, so I can wholeheartedly sympathize with you right there.
Oh, let me tell you, this is a genuine story. I had a person on the phone with me. Your software's not working. This is how it started. Okay, let me just figure this out. I spent an hour on the phone with this guy. The point that we ended up at was he had formatted his whole computer. He had nothing. He had no software at all. I don't know why he was ringing me. Like, obviously, there were bigger problems than your software's not working. But that's where we ended up. Figured out that he
That
was on
is
that. Anyway,
that goes
I
to the
love
same
email. That's why I
level.
love email.
Yeah, email is I think email is great in some senses. It gives you a chance to think and absorb information, but it also is horrible for follow-up questions where you're like, well, let me ask this, then you have this long chain, and eventually both people on both sides are starting to get a little upset with the pace it's going. So yeah,
Yes, it
but
can be. Absolutely.
better than snail mail, though. We'll say that. So,
Yes. Maybe in the age of, everyone's going to either AI or go the other extreme, and we'll just start doing like real old school handwritten letters, send them on a Pony Express across to you.
be manageable.
It's an option. It's an option. It's out there.
Well, now that you did bring up the magical two-letter acronym that is on everyone's mind right now, AI, how do you see that really shaping the kind of channels people are going to use, though? Because if you're using any kind of chatbot, even WhatsApp or whatnot, there's probably already a layer that you can bring in there that will be that first layer of support through AI.
Yeah, it's really blurring the lines. Like we can talk about different support channels, but at least Phone will be coming. There's a lot of AI already in phone calls, AI in chat, as you say. There's AI answering emails. It sort of melds them all together in a way that I don't know. I don't know that it's going to necessarily work out beautifully, but I think we're going to see a lot of people having to rethink, like, what do we mean by support channels when everything really is going through AI first before it goes to any other person? Does it become more of a customer preference then? Maybe, because the customer just chooses which way into the AI they want, like whatever works for them. That's possible. Perhaps we will start to see companies take things from lots of different channels, but they respond in a particular channel. Like, maybe we'll see, like, you go in it, whichever way you want, you start that conversation, it generates eventually something that maybe needs a person's attention. And then that person can respond in whichever way they want. Like, there's no reason that I couldn't, in theory, respond to everything by email, but the AI then turns that back into a voice message for the person who actually just wants to hear me on the phone. Like, that's potentially a future we could get to. I don't know. Just that's off the top of the head. I don't know how you feel about it.
I agree with it. One thing that kind of blew my mind along these lines was that I was at, so maybe about a year and a half ago, I was at a plug and play event. And, they're an incubator, a lot of popular companies that come from them. Hippocratic Oath was there. Oh no, Hippocratic AI was there. And then this is a software company that is basically reminding people to take their medication over the phone. And it blew my mind that they demonstrated an AI calling a person, like having small chat with them, and then saying, "Oh, by the way, are you still taking your medicine?" And then they said no. They were saying, "Why not?" So I mean, we are getting to that stage where AI can start making phone calls. And so you're right. I mean, if anything goes through email or whatever, I can still make the phone call. In your experience, since you do work for a platform that is customer support, customer service, what kind of response have you seen from customers when you start to introduce these AI elements?
I think the same sort of broad range that you would hear if you go to any of the support conferences, you hear the same thing. There is certain types of companies that are all in on AI first. Everything needs to be AI first. And I think for some types of customers, that probably works. There's a lot of people still who I think are yet to be convinced that this is the future, that AI is going to be involved in it, which I think is also totally understandable. I don't think the tools are all the way there yet. Like, we are all figuring out together what's going to work and where are we going to keep people in the loop and where does it make sense. Like, so I think a lot of people are still sort of at the back waiting to see what happens. Like, do I need to actually worry about this? And then there's probably, maybe the bulk of people are in the middle somewhere where you're like, I can see value. I'm seeing some areas here where it helps, but I am a little concerned about letting it touch some of the other parts of the customer interaction that I want to keep hold of as a person. So yeah, we're all sort of still in it. There's a bit of a mix going on, and we don't know when we get to the point where AI is a sustainable business, which is obviously not financially speaking sustainable right now. So we don't know what the costs are going to be when we get to the point at which those people who have invested billions of dollars want to make some money back. How much is it going to cost? And therefore, does that change the places in which we use AI, the places in which it actually still makes sense for a person to be there? So there's a lot of sort of waiting going on. And while we're waiting, where can I be using these tools today that's going to be helpful to me without accidentally destroying the team that I may then need to rely on in another 2 years when we figure out, oh, this doesn't make sense the way that we were doing it. So yeah, lots and lots of different positions along a spectrum when it comes to AI in support, as I think there is in AI in basically every field.
Yeah, I think one of the areas we're seeing that kind of people trying to dump everything and then going, oh, wait a minute, did we do the right thing? Is somewhere on the software engineering side also. I don't know if you saw the story about Amazon AWS where they were like, we're going to let AI pretty much do everything. And then AI said, you know what? I think this code is not efficient enough. So it deleted the entire code base and that caused an AWS outage. And now AWS is like, oh, what do we do? What do we do? So there's definitely still an area where we have to figure out, okay, the kind of the sweet spot.
There is
Um,
something I find it quite funny. I think we're in a weird time where we sort of let AI do things that we would never let a person do. Like I'm sure, as many engineers have had this exact same feeling of like, oh man, if we could just delete all of this and start again, it would be so much better. But we all know we can't really do that. And if we did, we would immediately get fired. But we're right now at a stage where the AI can make very dumb mistakes. And people are like, oh, it's just AI. It's okay. It'll learn. I mean, it won't learn, but it might get better. But we're sort of in a weird transitional period of treating them like toddlers that we have some reason given the keys to everything.
I in my, well, one, I have a toddler, so I think that's a very apt comparison right there. So that's pretty funny. One way that I've heard some people discuss it is that right now we're having people who are truly trying to understand how AI is going to be used and then how they can orientate themselves to it. So we're still in this very rough space of, okay, we've gone from a lot of people managing tasks to now managing objectives or managing, the how we shape things. What's your thoughts on that? On the basically the changing landscape, how you're seeing people basically in frontline support changing their careers with AI.
I think depending on where you are in your career, it's going to feel different, right? If you're towards the end of your career, you're like, oh, do we have to upset everything right now? Like I should have sort of got through everything. But I encourage people to think about the people who are starting support this year, right? If you've come out of school and you've used AI probably for the last few years now, and you are building a support team from scratch, of course you would use AI. It would be mad not to find some ways to put that in there because it's going to save, at least in some places, it's going to save you a lot of time and energy. It's going to amplify the efforts of your human staff. So of course you will find ways to do it. And so we probably all of us need to think about support in a couple of years from now. If this thing is sustainable, if these tools get a little bit better, how will it make sense to structure your team? And we probably are going to need fewer people for the same number of customers because at least some percentage of those questions that come in will either the AI will be able to just answer it, like self-service will become better in that it can give them the answer, it can have a chat with them, it can call them on the phone maybe and talk them through things. Some of those questions that would have used to fall through to a person don't need to fall through to a person. I was talking to David Sparks for the next episode of the Supportive Podcast, Max Sparky. He doesn't get many support emails, but he's talking about how he would love to get rid of some of the donkey work out of his supports. And like people who are like, I can't log in because my password's not there. It's a classic problem. Is there a reason that we need a person for that? Not really. It's just it's a technical problem that falls through to a person because that was the way that we could solve it before. There's some chunk of all of our support that should really just be automated away and that we've probably tried to automate away for years and years. And maybe the AI is now the thing that will get us over the line where, yeah, we don't have to deal with that anymore. So we've got to think about that. AI is going to be in there at least. But then there's a bunch of stuff that will still fall through to people. And is there a world in which some of the tools that we have get much more effective at helping us do that? Of course there is. We don't ask people every week like, hey, what have you done with a computer this week? Tell me what you've used a computer for. But we're all having those stupid conversations about AI right now because we don't know yet. We haven't figured it out. We will get there. Of course, we will have found every company will be using AI tools in the background. I'm like, do I need to figure out how to do a regular expression on this text file to pull out these bits so that I can answer this customer? No, a computer can do that, and AI can help me do that much better than the previous way that I was doing it, which was, not working. So, yeah, if you're in support right now and you're thinking about it, I think you have to think about what do you want to do, which parts of your job actually would be easier if you had some automation in there. That's a bucket you could look at, like stuff that goes in there. There's probably someone who can help you do it with AI, absolutely. Which parts do you just not want to do anymore that maybe it could be automated away? And which parts of the job, actually, I don't want a computer in there. I want to be in there. I want to be the person having that connection, that relationship with the customer. Maybe I'll use a tool to help me generate some stuff, but I want to be the one who is talking to the customer. I think you could probably bucket up your work your job, your existing job in that way, and then start to think about how you're going to apply it. It's good to think about that stuff because you've probably got a boss who's going to ask you 100 times, what are you doing with AI? And so it's much better if you come with a plan and say, look, this is the areas that I'm willing to let it into. This is where I think it's going to be really good. These areas, I don't want it involved in.
That's what you're saying almost mirrors pretty much, I'd have to say 70% through Anthropic's AI fluency course, in which they do talk about this. They talk about, what was it, delegation, what was it, determination. And this really is talking about this. What are you going to delegate to the system? Do you have the diligence to actually look through what it's giving you and saying, "Oh, this is complete garbage," or "No, this is right." So I mean, you hit a spot on the head, and I mean, these people at the Rompic spent a long time putting this together, and you succinctly just said it right there. So I completely agree. I'd like to change lanes just a little bit, just because you do work at Health Scout, and so I'm very curious. What is your opinion on certain companies that have gone all in on AI support, whether good or bad? I'm not going to say their name because I don't want to give them free press, but I think you know what I'm talking about.
Sure. We could all just take a second and imagine the name. There we go. Yeah, it's not Help Scout's approach, which I don't think you don't have to dig very far on the Help Scout side to see we are still trying to have that clear message of the people are what matters, right? It would be weird. I find it weird to say AI first in anything really, because like that, it's just a tool. It would be like saying, you know what, we are computer first here. You're like, yeah, okay, you use AI, great. I don't care. Well, I don't care that you're AI first. I only care if I get an answer, then it's helpful. If you use AI to do that, great. If it requires people to do that, fine. I don't actually care which technology you're using behind the scenes. But there is a danger, I think, to saying AI first, because you sort of are throwing away a whole bunch of stuff that computers don't really touch. Like anyone who's done support knows that knowing the answer to the question is sometimes maybe 20% of the actual job. It's then, okay, well, this is the answer, but how do I get this person who's in this situation to understand the answer, to kind of integrate that answer into their understanding of what our product does and what it's for, and then to make the necessary changes so that the answer is actually helpful to them. There's a whole lot of psychology going on there. There's a whole lot of trying to understand who this person is and what they're trying to get done, because sometimes the question they've asked you is not the question they need answered. So you can give them the answer to that question, and you probably should, but it's probably still not going to get them where they need to get to, because they haven't really understood what your system can do in relation to what they were trying to do. So there's so much of the support interaction which is connecting with this person and their particular goals, and then figuring out how can I handhold you across the gap that you are currently facing. And if you're AI first, great. I mean, I think if you're a massive company, maybe that's just what you have to do, because you can't possibly have enough people to serve them. If you're Google and you've got, 1 billion people using Gmail, AI first probably makes perfect sense, because it's going to get to many more of the people than you could possibly ever get to with humans. You could fill the whole of Australia with call centers. You're not going to have enough people or enough water. That's a problem in Australia. So, yeah, AI first, I think, it's just a symptom of a weird hype cycle that we're in, where we try to push the technology to the front. And the technology is never at the front of support. It's always in support of the people.
You touched on two things that I think are very interesting. One, the why. I mean, more support people need to really understand why someone asking this question, because you could write them a newsletter, and if it doesn't touch on the why, they're going to come back and be even more confused. You might make the situation worse. So I think you're right. AI doesn't really do a good job right now of understanding why is someone answering this question. And then if you answer the why, maybe you saved yourself a whole bunch of time. So I mean, that is something that's still very human centric, which is strange that we even have to say that term now, human centric. But another funny thing you talked about is water use. And I actually saw an article the other day that was saying that certain parts of the world are now experiencing water shortage because of the amount of power that AI is having to consume, whether it be through hydroelectricity or whatever. But that's also something that I don't think a lot of people really take into consideration is the environmental impact, how everyone's going very much AI forward right now. Have you seen that as much in the articles you've written?
It's a tricky situation, right? Because of course, especially when you work in companies like most of us do, we have investors. Those people want to get their money back. Everyone's moving to AI, of course. Like the temptation is incredible to just adopt everything. We've all lived through, and we are currently living through, a time in which technology and the maybe unexpected side effects of technology have started to destroy things which are actually quite important to us in our continued survival on this planet. And so it's a conversation that probably is not being had enough within all of technology. Is like not just can this do the job, could this do the job of support, but also what are the costs of it doing that? Because we know that the costs of hiring all the people to be in support teams, that number is on a million spreadsheets, right? Everybody knows. And so it's very appealing then to say, well, what if we could do this for 10% of the cost? But it's only 10% of the salary cost, right? It's not 10% of the actual cost. The actual costs are things which maybe we don't know the answer to right now, but are definitely things like increased water usage and vast amounts of electricity being used for AI to do like a not quite as good job as the person will. One of the things I worked on recently here was a little fake infomercial about what if we were using AI for support and then we discovered people and how excited we would be about people and their incredible ability to understand nuance and to use their judgment and to have a human connection with you, and also to only drink, a maximum of 8 glasses of water a day, I reckon I could get through. So I'm not destroying the planet when I'm helping customers, but maybe some other stuff is. But I think we also need to keep in balance that we're also wasting incredible amounts of stuff in all sorts of other areas. And so I don't think it's quite possible that we could, for example, stop filling up vast amount of United States with cornfields in order to turn it into not as good fuel and use the water that was there to instead use AI. Like that might be a trade-off that we could do as well. So I don't think it necessarily means we should not be using AI, but it does mean we should be thinking about it and we should be talking about the total costs of all these things that we do in all areas, not just the immediate obvious cost.
That is all very valid. I mean, and yes, I've driven through Nebraska, and there are endless fields of corn there. So I can definitely say that's true. Um, I'm curious, since we started with channels, and then obviously, like most things, we dovetailed into AI. In your experience, how many conversations do you see right now that are pretty much being dominated by AI? It sounds like, our organization is very AI forward. And do you think that these conversations should be continue to be AI focused, or do you think people need to start, not being so basically tunnel vision on AI right now?
It would be nice not to be talking about it every day, all the time. That's for sure. I think someone who I worked through like the first web boom, early 2000s, as a web
The
designer,
dot coms.
and
Yeah.
yeah, all the .com boom and bust. And it is very familiar to have like everybody constantly talking all the time about everyone needs a website and what are we doing on the web, and we've got to shift all our customers and our selling to the web and stuff. And we know where it ended up, which is there was a big bust, but yes, of course, we came out the other side and we figured out what are the actual useful parts of the websites and which ones should we be investing money in. And I suspect we will get to the same point again. The bust, I think, is going to be bigger this time because there's so much more money involved than there was last time, and because it's so much more integrated into businesses than the web was. It was more of a slow rollout of, all the businesses getting websites and it coming down and down and down until the, sole traders have a website as well. But I think what support people and support leaders need to be thinking about is, let's just assume that some form of AI is part of the future. As I was saying, it's part of the future of your support team. It's going to be in there in some way. We don't know exactly how or how much of it or where the improvement in skill is going to end, because presumably it will. Certainly for LLMs, I think we're kind of reaching that boundary of like they're not getting that much better now, generation on generation. So if we get to some point where it's useful, how are you going to be any different than the other 500 million customers who are using the same AI tool that you are using essentially under the hood, right? Maybe you've got 7 layers of software on top of OpenAI or Claude, but you're still basically using the same thing. So how are you going to be any different in terms of the kind of service offering that you can create than your competitor who's using essentially the same tool stack? Which is, of course, where we are now. Like, yeah, we all use computers, we all use the internet, we all have websites and knowledge bases and help desks. How is my support different than the guy down the street who's using the same tools? And it's probably not the tools that are making the difference, is it? It's probably, well, we're at a company at Help Scout where customer service is valued, and therefore we have a highly paid and well-trained support team, and therefore we trust them to be able to do more and give them more permission to make decisions than maybe another team would have. And therefore, at the end of that chain of therefores, a customer has a better experience. It's not going to be any different when we have this new shape of support teams in which maybe AI is the first port of call, and maybe this is what some companies mean by AI first, if we're being generous. The first thing you interact with when you get support is an AI tool. So how are you going to differentiate from them? Or maybe our AI tool makes it easier to get to a person. Or maybe when you do reach a person, these people are more highly trained. They have access to other tools. They can make changes for you that this other company won't do. Maybe it's more personalized. Maybe there's just more of a human relationships there. So I think everyone needs to be thinking about AI aside, any tool aside, what is it that we value about the type of service that we are giving, and how do we make that better, and how do we tell people that that's the kind of service they can get, which is the other challenge. Because if you only ever interact with AIs and you never have to go to a person, maybe some of that differentiation doesn't exist anymore.
It's interesting you say that, because what I've started to see it as some people, it almost seems like they are lending their brain power to AI now. And so I swear sometimes I just have to ask someone, did you think of that, or did you have AI tell you that? So it is something where, like, we're having to say, okay, really, can you separate the two now? Can you please one thing for yourself instead of just giving all your thought power to AI? So for new leaders out there, how would you say they need to empower themselves where they can't use AI as such a crutch then?
It's going to be really hard if you start in support now and you log in to answer those first few support tickets, or conversations, I should say. That's the Help Scout terminology. If you're having a conversation with a customer, but the answer is sort of given to you by an AI tool, how do you learn that answer? And how do you learn that sometimes that answer is not 100% correct? Maybe it's 70% correct, or maybe it's not correct at all in this situation for this customer. There is a big challenge coming in terms of creating more experienced and highly skilled people, because I think the AI, as we use it now, is super helpful if you're pretty good already, but you haven't covered every possible scenario. That's what happens if you've done support for a year or two. You're like, oh, most of the time I can answer fine. Sometimes I'm like running into things I have never seen before. And an AI which goes, well, this has been answered 10 times by 10 other people in your team over the years. Here's the answer. That's fantastic. And you can learn that because you can just integrate that into all that knowledge you already have. You know where to slot it in and where it makes sense and where it doesn't make sense. If you're new, you don't have all that framework set up. How are you going to learn it? I don't know what the answer is to that question. I don't think anyone knows yet. I think we're all going to have to figure that out together. But it helps, obviously, if you have some continuity of your team and you've got people who've been there for years and you're able to use their skills, and maybe the role of the more senior people is less and less answering individual questions, and it's more and more transference of knowledge, transference of culture around support. And this is how we talk to our customers. When I used to hire people in my last job, I was in Sydney and I would bring people from the US when we hired them, or from Europe, fly them out to Sydney for a week. And like, I'm not going to tell you the answer to any of the support questions because I think you can figure that stuff out. But I will tell you, this is how we think about customers and how we serve them. And This is what it means to deliver good service at this company. And that's what I want you to learn while you're here, where you can ask that question of another person and while you can watch over someone's shoulder. And then you can go back and then you can start to learn the technical stuff, which is easier to pick up. Or at least it was easier to pick up when every answer that you would see in the help desk was definitely a correct answer, which I think is not necessarily the case now. If you've got AI out there answering on its own, that's going to be more challenging. So I don't know if that answers your question. There's a lot to think about.
Definitely a lot to think about. One thing you touched on, I think that I really liked is that there's still a need for people to teach culture. There's still a need for people to say, this is how we treat our brand. This is how we want people to feel. So it's still going to be a very long time before I think any kind of AI is going to be able to teach just like hospitality, I think is one way to put it. So that's very well said. As we wrap up our time here, first, thank you for coming with me. I'd like to give you a chance just to share with everyone what you have going on, because I know you've name dropped a couple things, and maybe people don't know some of the great information you have to give out there. So I'd like to give you a chance just to evangelize what you have going on so other people can enjoy it.
For sure. All right. Well, you can sign up for my newsletter, which goes out every Thursday. That's called the Supportive Weekly. You can just Google that. Also, the podcast is roughly monthly, although hopefully a little bit more frequently in the next series, which is coming pretty soon, which I might get you on actually. Because what we're going to do in that series, we're going to talk about, I'm going to just take some existing newsletters that I've written before and then just have people have a conversation. Like, tell me what you think about this, and then we'll see where it goes. I think there's lots to discuss there. So maybe some of your listeners as well would be interested in that. The next episode is coming out at the end of this month. That's with, as I said, Max Sparky, just as a one-person sort of company, talking about how he thinks about his customer service. But this season, I think, has had a lot of interesting conversations. I talked to a brewer about the big brewery in Sydney. I talked to a guy who reviews mattresses. That was the most recent episode. There's lots to learn from people who are not doing exactly what I do or what you do. And then, I think what I'm going to be thinking about in the next few months probably is what does the human future of support look like? Where are the spots where we still will need people, and what will they be doing there? I think that's a big focus area for everybody.
I think there's a lot of content out there that a lot of people can enjoy. I'll definitely look that up myself, and if you do invite me, I will gladly accept that invite. So I'd like to close this out with the way I close out almost every episode. It's by saying very much the motto for my show, and that is, support just isn't a job. Support is a mindset. Once we take all the things we learn in support and then we apply it to pretty much anything else, we are better for it. Matt, thank you again for having me on. Well, you being on my show, tongue tied there a little. And I wish you all the best this week.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, talk to you later. Bye.